So suitable design and business forecast for new facilities. We're going to do it in two parts. On the first part, we are going to have a presentation where I will explain, actually most of my colleagues did explain what RAS is and its constitution and structure, etc. But we are going to look at them from a business perspective, and on the second part of it, we are going to do a small practical session. I will be showing you guys some Excel sheet, and we'll do some calculations on it, and we're gonna have some idea how it's going to be look like if you have one. All right. So in aquaculture, we have generally some major issues, some problems, or some things that we have to look into when we are going for a new business, and those can be categorized easily like in 5 major topics. So the first one is market availability and sale price, second is site selection and licenses, and the third is site system design and technology, labor force, and financing. So before all this, we have another major issue, which is that we have to make a choice which species that we are going to grow in RAS. So there are like some available fish species that have been readily, like, you must have heard some of them, like the rainbow trout and salmon, or like bass and sea brown species, or like turbots, catfish. Those are like the most popular species that's being grown out there. When we are choosing our species, we have to like ask few questions for the price and market availability. Like the first question is like, the price is acceptable. Like when we're gonna sell it, when the business is successful, that the turnover is like must be acceptable, it's like there has to be a certain amount of money in the profit of the business. And the second question is it like, can it sold in big volumes? Like, when you start up a business, of course, like can be small, but in commercial size, you got to sell it, and you got to sell it in big volumes because your production is like growing constantly. And there are also other elements like affecting your business turnover, which is like the cost. And the cost is like few lines, like processing, transport cost, or feed cost, or variable cost and fixed cost in 2 big categories. And the difference between like the whole amount you got paid for and the whole amount you paid for, that has to be calculated. And that has looked at the sale price and market availability of FAO's some price research. I will share this information at the end of my presentation. On the left, you see a salmon price range between like January 2011 to 2018. And like, as you see, there are some fluctuations which kind of affects your business and your turnover, and you have to adapt those changes in time. And on the right side, there's a price for trout in a few years. And in the light of the latest events of COVID-19, we kind of don't know how it's going to end up in a few months, the prices, but we'll see together, right? And this is also from the same research, and there's like, I want to say on this, like there's prices on the third column from the right, and it's like different for each kilo. So it's like there's gradings, and the quality of the product depends on that grading scale. Like on the top, like there's the Atlantic salmon, and it's like 2-3 kilo per piece. Is like only sold 4.61 euros, while like 7 to 8 is 5.07. So the growth is also important for you. For your final product has to fit with your business plan. And comes to the second major issue is like the site selection. We have 3 problems. Coming from the site, and there's also licensing. So the source of water, you have to decide what source of water you're gonna use, and the authority or approvals like licensing. When it comes to licensing, there are like local, regional, and national authorities that you have to apply before the construction and get the legitimacy of your business. And the water treatment is kind of huge concern, because like it may depend on the country that you're going to build the farm, but when you do it, like always the water that is leaving your facility is always a concern of the authorities, and you have to treat that water and you have to provide a proof of this treatment to the legal authorities. And there are other issues that has to be taken care, but it's like changes every time depending on the location and country. So when it comes to the water source, I would recommend 100% groundwater because of its purity and, let's say, temperature, but temperature is kind of like cloudy because, I mean, it depends on the species you choose to grow, right? So, and if it's possible, I would say like avoid the streams, ponds, and lakes, because I mean they are kind of threat to your system, especially in RAS, because once it's contaminated, you're facing huge problems. And streams, ponds, and lakes can be carriers for, like, I don't know, lots of diseases, depending on the location, of course. And if you have no groundwater available, a borehole water can be also used instead, but I would recommend you to analyze that water for sure. And if you're going to do it with a sea species and you're going to use the seawater, there are some precautions you have to take. For example, like my friend mentioned, scent filter is a must. You know, it's like when it's a seawater, you have to do some processes like to eliminate any contamination and any particles that may harm your RAS system. And the third one, let's say the municipal water, also has to be treated and eliminated from the chemicals that contains in it. You know, that's there. You have to eliminate them, and that's also usable. It's recommended, but just a little bit more work. That's all. And the next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. So. Now, when you have chosen your water source and your location for the licensing and etc., it's recommended to have a prep project. You know, before anything goes on, just prepare projects and absolutely seek consult. Avoid doing it alone. This is like the RAS systems especially requires lots of calculations. You have to be meticulously calculating all those things. So seek counsel and have a prep projects. And you know, the authorities for the licensing extra, you know, this can take a very long time. It may like take 2 years, even more, depending on the location. And just for this, you have to, I mean, you need someone to do those things for you. I mean, if you're not going to be a commercial size, of course, you try to do it by yourself, but at least you may get a second opinion. And if it's a commercial size, then you need large markets. You need to close to the large markets, and you need to have a network of transportation which is already be in place. Otherwise, the cost of transportation will definitely harm your income, I guess. And the construction is like one of the, let's say, disadvantages of RAS, I suppose, because once you build it, it's not easy to modify it. Like, it's not like, let's say, you build 100 tons of RAS facility, and the second day you cannot say I'm going to do it like 300,000. The cost will be enormous. It's maybe easier to build another one in another location than to make it go over. And the discharge water, as I mentioned before, legal authorities and legal things that you have to do, some processings to eliminate and clear the water you're letting out from your RAS. And also the location is important for the workforce, because in aquaculture you need someone with expertise. You need someone who you can trust to put on top of the farm, who can manage and work with different people and different, let's say, departments. And when it's come to system design and technology, where things are kind of get interesting in RAS, you absolutely need professional help. I mean, there are lots of RAS builders out there, like systems they sell, and they design everything for you according to your needs. Don't do it alone. Again, professional help is important. Design, construct, and final startups, they are usually behind you. They have to be there, and if possible, visit another farm with the same technique, with the same, let's say, RAS system working, to see if there are any problems, if there needs to be things that has to be solved, and also the management and operational procedures of them, to see how it is on the floor, you know, because when you're running a business, something like mismanagement happens, or some misoperational stuff, like, I don't know, some machine stop functioning, then problem can grow very, very fast, and you may face some certain consequences. When it is doing that pre-project, like, you have to do a feasibility check, and you must avoid paper recirculating systems. You have to visit the facility and see it on action, you know, because on paper everything looks very good, but it is not when it's on the field, you know, when it's real. And the regulations, as I meant, and the production mass is also important. You have to decide it before and plan everything according to this, because your production mass, your production amount decides even the oxygen generator size, even the biofilter size, like every components of RAS. So this is 5,000 ton facility from Norway, I suppose, and this is being shared by IFA Aquaculture, which is an Irish association. They have like this catch is like a grow out facility of RAS design. They have like 5,000 tons and 6 annual stockings, which is like, I mean, 6 annual stockings is important in terms of like you have to spread your last product through the year, so you can harvest through the year and you can sell through the year. I mean, you always like have to prepare a plan which like requires annual, like, more stockings and more harvestings. The number is bigger, it's good. Like 6 times harvest a year, it's good. 8 months harvest a year, it's better. But of course, it also depends on the market. I mean, you plan your business according to the market's demand. And on this facility, they have like post-smolt RAS plants, like high 180,000 smolt to 100 gram to 200 gram, and they have max stocking density of 55 kilogram per cubic meter. And there are like pre-grow out raceway systems and final grow out RAS systems. Also a new technology, a new RAS, like called concentrating tank concept, or CDC, which actually shares the walls and the bioreactor of the whole RAS, and this kind of, let's say, your capital, your costs, like lowers your construction cost especially, and also they have moved the pipelines from underground to the overground, so there'll be no need to, you know, do some construction works also under the ground. So this concept is emerging new design. Maybe you may look at it on the internet and see some offers from other companies. There are some designs and pictures available on the internet. Design, there's like when you're planning your project, as on the slide, you have to plan everything in details, like how many weeks is going to be your production period, your hatchery, or how many eggs you're gonna, you know, stock in every batch. You know, and how many batches and what time is gonna take, vaccination, harvesting, like, or yield production, and the weight, harvest weight, everything needs to be planned from A to Z. Of course, they may, like on the roads, may something goes wrong, but never does go fluently. So you have to just face with it and fix it as good as possible, I guess. So the labor force, when it comes to labor, you need a skilled employee, I mentioned before, because they are running your farm, and you have to trust them. You have to trust them with the decision-making processes and the decisions they made. And they may do things maybe not well. They may make mistakes. So the solution is always keeping up with every news, keeping up with training, keeping up with education, and keeping up with consulting. Whenever you run short, you ask for help, and you train and you educate your labor, your employees, so on farm they can make your profit growing, or let's say it's on your benefit. To sum up, as we mentioned till now, all the concerns of the major issues, actually there are like few things that we can say, key success factors, and which is like the site selection and location. We said is like the high-tech hub in Norway. They say it's like when you seek for help, it's important there is someone close to your facility with the knowledge, you know. So in Norway, when it comes to salmon producing, they have a good knowledge and good technology network that may help you grow your business. And the second thing is kind of market. So you want to reach the market, you know, which is kind of the biggest markets on the world is China, let's say, or America. And also the operational attributes, what does mean, like when things are going wrong, or when the operational needs are management wise, or there's like in US market, in US operational systems are good, they're good at this, and you may need to consider such things. But I mean, that doesn't mean that you have to go to Norway and China or USA, you know. So you just need to find right people and get them together to work for you. And the product attributes here are absolutely set. The high price is important. So the species that you're going to grow out to have a turnover, a good turnover, it has to be sold on a high price, right? And sustainability credential, this is very popular lately. So you need your system to be sustainable, but RAS is an advantage on this side because it's more sustainable. You know, there's like no biological dangers, let's say, like in comparison with the sea cages or something. And the local demand is always better if you can sell it in a local way. It's always better, you know, other than trying to export it to some country. But when it comes to huge volumes, okay, so the financing, as we have few things that you have to consider when we are doing our finances. It's like the total cost is important, like how much of money you're gonna invest, how much of it's working capital, and there are like things may go wrong on the way, and there'll be like unexpected costs. Stocking is also important because this is what decides how much money you're gonna earn. But as I mentioned earlier, in RAS, I mean, there's like issues with stocking. Yeah, once you plan and build the stocking, it's not easy to make it larger. So you have to decide carefully. And then for first-time businesses, like sellers, first-time RAS users, it's maybe beneficial for them to stock more and sell early, so you don't have to wait for a longer period to gain revenue. You know, it may help your business stabilize for the first few years, because for the first few years are very hard for us because of the construction costs. Actually, it's in every system when you invest, the first few years are hard, but it's also parenthesis for us. And the components of RAS, like if they're not installed when they're first done, it's an issue. If it's under-dimensioned, as I mentioned, you cannot stock if it's under-dimensioned. The calculations very well. If something is not functioning, there has to be someone available close to fix it, or your on-site manager or someone on your site is good. The growth is depending, of course, species, size and temperature, and eventually FCR, but all the other things, your business plan can, can help you reach the top level of your growth in your system. As my friends, other colleagues mentioned in earlier training sessions and the ones that are coming, the RAS components, the dimensions, size of the tanks, the pipes, or the biofilters, it's all important. But there's actually only two big major issues for RAS. One is the stocking size, and the second is the waste management, so nitrogen. These two are limiting factors for your RAS system. So if you want to have top level growth in your facility, these two must plan very well. And of course, there are budgets and financial calculations to see how your business is doing. We're gonna do something like this at the end of this session. We're gonna do some practice and plan. And if things are not going well, of course, you have to find where things went wrong and do revision. Even if you have an idea how to fix it, it's always better to seek consult and ask experienced people. So this is from CBRAM and CBUS operation. It's a study done by Koçak and Tatlıgil, and this was published in one of our institute journals, Turkish Journal of Fisheries and Aquaculture. You can just search it. It's a free online journal. Anyway, so this study is done like in around 40 farms, and they have made a percentage cost, an average cost for this operation. And if you see on the first, on the second column, like the variable costs, and it's on at the end, on the very right side of the table, there's like the share of total costs headline, and down there is like GFCM, CBRAM and CBUS. And if you see the total variable costs for GFCM CBRAM is 95% and CBUS 94%. This is a sea catch operation, and this is like 15 years ago. So these are changed. We will see in the next few slides. And they have like fixed cost of 5%, which is incredible. I mean, this is incredible. This is good, but it's not this way. So we will see how it is now. So this is again from the Irish Association of Aquaculture, they did it for they did a research for salmon producing in RAS systems in Ireland, and they have come up with some calculations. According to them, the capital costs like 33 million euro for 6,000 ton facility, I suppose. Yeah, 5 or 6, but I think this one is 6,000 tons. And there's also, no, 5,000 tons, sorry, I'm sorry, 5,000 tons facility. And then on the bottom, Langsand and Danish salmon, there's 2 farms which is currently operating, and their costs are the Langsand is 1,000 ton operation, and it's like 6 million something euro, and the Danish one is 2,000 tons, and it's like 13,400,000 euros, which is actually, when you just multiply it with the number, the coefficient to reach the 5,000 tons, which is very similar with what they have come up with, like 33,112,000 euro. And there's also other costs where it's not fixed. It's like you have to use some chemicals, like some power, some feed, some salaries, small purchase, insurances, maintenances. And here, in these costs, they have said the fish feed is 59.4%, which is a big number. And let's say, make your FCR better, you probably will put value into your business in this section. And as they say, the primary operational costs, which is the total cost of the finances on this slide, is about 2.56 euro per kilo of whole fish, which is a salmon fish in this case. And on another study, they come up with also cost and average production per kilogram live weight in Norway's salmon system also. They have found out the variable costs are 75% of the total costs. So the fixed costs are 25% of your total cost, which was 5% before, when I said it's a sea cage facility, which is in 15 years ago. Everything is changed now, the system tag everything. So the 25% of feed is some fixed cost, and 75% of it is the variable cost, and which is including management, administration, facility, maintenance, interest, and depreciation, and some fixed cost. And even though the cost seems big, the RAS facilities, especially in Norway, but also worldwide, is increasing. They're kind of 4 times bigger or 5 times more now. And when it's come to RAS, it's especially in small business, it's now 25% against 65%, which is kind of increasing. RAS is taking its place now because of the environmental concerns of the sea cages and problems they come with, the biological issues and diseases, etc., which is affecting the business. So they're moving into a RAS. It's becoming more popular every day. And this is a research result of RAS facilities, which are known to be built in the next decade. So in the next 10 years, maybe some of them will not be built or will not be finished, but those are the projects that's been announced. And the interesting thing is the biggest ones looks like in USA, and there's a firm, a commercial salmon firm, which is planning to build 200,000 metric tons of facility in USA, which is probably going to be the biggest RAS ever. I don't know, maybe in the future we can beat it, but if they build it, of course, I mean, it's just a plan for now. They're just investing and looking for investors, I suppose. And but the number if you come up with a number, Norway has the largest number of RAS systems. 13 new projects is unknown for the next decade. So we'll see together if those RAS systems will be available and will be functioning well, will be working well. And also, some of them are using the new system that I mentioned earlier, the CTC, the concentrating tank system, better. And they will put the RAS to a new version, maybe 2.0. And that system is actually lowering the cost of construction because there's no underground pipeline, etc., as I mentioned earlier. Anyway, that was it for now.